Hi, I'm Emma Wylie, and today on our podcast we've got Natalie Collins who's come to speak with us. Natalie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I am Natalie and I am a gender justice specialist and I'm based in Basildon in Essex, down the road from Chelmsford.
Welcome aboard. Just to tell you, Natalie's also brought her gorgeous puppy Preston, who may be dancing around in the background if you can hear some creaks on the floorboards. Natalie, just to fill you in on what we're up to today, this is a podcast aimed particularly at commuters, and today we're going to be discussing how we prepare for Lent and what that means for us. So just to chuck it straight back at you, any thoughts?
Well, I didn't grow up. Well, I've never really been a big kind of practicer of Lent growing up. So it's quite I think, and I work quite in a quite amorphous way. I work freelance, so it's quite easy for these kind of seasons to pass by. But I think there's a real power in becoming more aware of the fact that we're moving into Lent, and almost I think actually it's really handy because it could otherwise it could easily pass me by. It gets Pancake Day, like oh it's
Quick.
about to start. So I think preparing for Lent, it's about kind of being aware that this is coming up, and that then allows us to really make the most of this season of on the way up to Easter, and it gives us an opportunity to think about that. Whereas I think what happens is I don't really think about Lent, and then it gets to Pancake Day, and by then I haven't really built in any time or resources to be able to do anything with it. So yeah.
Absolutely, it's that last minute dash for eggs and flour, and then, oh no, this is meant to mean something. What are we going to do about it? Similarly, I haven't spent a lifetime practicing Lent, really, and it has been more recently, in the last few years, that I've really concentrated a little bit more on what Lent is all about. And I've been thinking recently about it in terms of like a punctuation, that the church calendar, sometimes it can feel completely dissociated from the rest of life. It doesn't feel like it really slots in. You know, we tend to celebrate Christmas and then everybody else has finished Christmas and we're still going. We've only just actually rounded off our Christmas season. Everybody else has moved on. When we're doing Advent, we're meant to be being calm and focused and preparing in this time of waiting. And in fact, the rest of the world's going bonkers. So sometimes we feel a bit like we don't relate. But I find that the calendar can give us a sort of punctuation in our narrative, so we can get a bit caught up in the busyness of life, and sometimes the church calendar goes, hey, hang on a minute, have you thought about this? And so approaching Lent for me is about starting to think about what Lent is going to be and how it might interrupt my life a bit, that it might make me think slightly differently, preparing for the huge explosion in our lives as Christians that is Easter. So it goes a little bit beyond perhaps the giving up of chocolate, which is what it always used to be for me.
Yes, and my friend who's Catholic, she always remembers being a child where they gave up chocolate and then all the money they'd spent on chocolate they gave to CAFOD, and
nice.
That was a thing. Yeah. And so even now, even though she calls herself a collapsed Catholic now, even though she's not practicing anymore, she still gives up chocolate at Lent and then gives the money somewhere. So I think, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's actually seeing that as maybe the first step towards it being something that's much more holistically about something.
Absolutely. I see that the idea of giving something up over that period of Lent seems to have spread out from beyond our tight Christian circles. I think that's rather glorious to see people thinking, oh, we're coming up to Lent, so, you know, what am I going to think of giving up? And a lot of people are giving things up in terms of improving their health. And it is a very positive thing to be stopping and taking stock of where you are and what you might do to change the way that you live slightly. But I can remember looking a few years ago, actually, instead of giving something up, looking at what I might take up, what might draw me closer in my preparation for Easter, what might draw me closer to God. And so I've been thinking this Lent, in a sort of preparation for the period of preparation that is Lent, how might I interrupt my life a little bit more? How might I allow a little bit more punctuation, as I said, into the narrative of my life that might enable me to take a break, spend some time with God, and discern some meaning around all that's going on. So I was thinking particularly as we consider commuters on a train, that space, that chunk of time as you hurtle between one place and another with everything buzzing in your head, thinking constantly about where you've been and where you're going and what you should be doing and what you haven't done, and occasionally catching a glimpse of something out of the window. How about grasping that time for something a little bit different? Do you have any particular Lenten practices yourself? Is there anything that draws you?
Well, I have to say, as an activist, I've used Lent as an opportunity to. Most years I refer to God using only female terms during Lent.
Love
So
it.
it's like a 40-day time where it's the amount of time we can offend people is limited to 40 days. So that's something that I've done. So I think it can be used as an opportunity. That 40 days gives you an opportunity to try things, maybe to try spiritual practices that maybe you're not used to. And I think it's really interesting what you're saying about this doing it on using the commute, because I guess often when I don't commute regularly, but when I'm on the commuter train, people are either using it as an opportunity to catch up on some sleep, to do their makeup, or like to just kind of be a bit of a zombie. So to actually say, this year I'm going to use that period of time to reflect, and I think what you're saying about punctuation is really interesting, because like actually you can choose which type of punctuation you are really able to make space for, or that God's asking you to make space for. So it might be like, am I going to make it a comma or a semicolon, or is it going to be a whole full stop? And so there's a whole there are lots of different, how much pause have you got the capacity for, or is God calling you to make the capacity for? So I think that's helpful.
Yeah, I love the idea of playing around with an exclamation mark. What would be my exclamation mark in my lead up to Lent? What would that be? What would I be exclaiming to the world? Maybe it's referring to God with gender neutral terms or female terms. I love that idea. Yeah, I agree that this opportunity is one that we need to recognise in order to grasp. I was reading a book once that told me about little bits of time that we can get given that can be times of frustration. So I catch buses a lot, okay? And when the bus is late, it's a time of real agitation, because you're thinking, hell's teeth, I need to be in this place, I haven't done this, there's all this stuff that's going on. And in fact, just this one line in this book just said, how about receiving that as a gift of time to yourself?
Yeah.
I thought, imagine that. Actually, if you say, no, I'm going to, instead of allowing this time to slip by, I'm going to claim it and say, let's see how I can use that. What is the opportunity that I have here? And maybe that is something that that we can think of in the lead up to Lent, but also in terms of Lent itself. How can I make the most of this marked out time, as you said, this 40 days? See it as a gift in its own right. I mean, Jesus over the 40 days was not having a great time, let's be honest. He was wandering in the desert, being very hungry and being tempted. And I think sometimes Lent can be a really difficult period as we lead up to Easter, but that can make us wary of it. And it can make us think, well, you know what, I'm just going to skip through it. I'll give up some chocolate and get over it. But actually, perhaps it's an invitation to dig in. Perhaps it's an invitation to mark out some space and some time. So maybe in this time of preparation as we lead up to Lent, you might want to take the time of your daily commute to use it as a bit of punctuation. See what Lent is going to mean to you. Have a time of thought and contemplation. So thanks very much, Natalie, for joining us this morning. Thanks to Preston the dog and to my husband, who wandered in halfway through our recording. Thanks very much, everybody.